Hey everyone, welcome back to the Stay on Your Bike podcast. We've got a really special guest on this week, somebody I've known a long time, good friends with, and probably arguably one of the most decorated bike riders in many disciplines. Without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Jared Graves. Thanks for coming on, bud.
How's it going, Paigey? Good to be here.
Not too bad, mate. Thanks. Good to see you. It's been a while since we've seen each other. Both been off the circuit now for a little bit. How are you getting on over there?
Yeah, all good. Just doing the dad life thing at home. Bit of some changes with Yeti this year, so still coaching the guys and everything, but just staying at home. Two kids now, so life's been a little bit of a change. The second one came along last October, right at the end of the season, so been really good being at home, staying with them. So been cool.
Congrats, mate, on that one. And are you enjoying it? Are you loving being a dad?
Oh, it's like Finn now is he's just coming up to 3, so he's has his moments, but like he's just so cool to hang out with. Like it's amazing. So yeah, I just love hanging out with them. Super cool kids and challenging, but in a good way.
Yeah. Well, you've been through many challenges over your career, so I'm sure you'll be able to handle that for sure. And before we get into all the stuff that you've done on the bike, you know, being a dad now, does that change your perspective on stuff? Because obviously in the past you've always been super focused, a really professional athlete. How's things changed, or is it not changed? It's just changed gear a little bit into having kids to look after rather than just yourself.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a big bit of a change. So I mean, that's what Jess and myself always talked about. Like she wanted to have kids years ago, and then we were talking about it, and we were gonna do it when the whole cancer thing came on. So that put a pause on everything for quite a few years. So you got to go through the chemo, all that. And then it takes about 2 years to keep having tests to make sure that everything's out of your system, basically. So you're safe to have kids without any sort of risk of birth defects and that. So that just postponed things a few years, and then but and then again at the same time, like got back riding again, and I mean, I just knew from your season when we were racing the e-bikes, like I just knew I was over it that year. Like I came back and I felt really ready for everything in say 2020 when COVID hit. So I
Yeah.
wanted to come back, felt like I had something to prove, and then when that didn't happen, I just went like it was just I don't know. I just never got back to that point again mentally. So
Yeah.
I'd say like I did what I wanted to do with my racing career, and then I just knew the fire was gone. And in 20, I did a few sort of XC things at home. That was a bit of fun. And 2022, I decided it was time to hang it up. So
Yeah. And for sure, I mean, obviously I've been on the circuit for a long time, seen your amazing career and how focused you are on stuff. And yeah, when we were doing that little bit of e-biking together, which was cool because I kind of stopped racing as you were starting back in the day, so it was cool to do a little bit with you there. But yeah, I could see you were not your usual self and focused on
no, when you're
it.
waking up on race morning, you're not even nervous one bit. And like I
Yeah.
literally just I felt bad for it, but like I no other way to explain. Like I just did not care. So I love riding e-bikes, but racing them was never for me. So.
Yeah, I'm sure if you'd have done it when you were a bit younger and you still had the drive and focus, you would have been just as successful as that as you have been everything else. So it's a weird one, isn't it? I mean, you raced for so long. Was it? Did it take a while, like mentally, to decide that you weren't going to race as professionally as just that was your job, or was it
I
just?
think it just sort of came along as like a bit of a natural progression. Like everything throughout my whole career, like there was always that real fire for it, like that motivation, the want to do it, and
Mhm.
it was always there. And then all of a sudden in 2021, it just wasn't there anymore. So it was a emotional decision a little bit in the end. As like Damien Smith, when I told him that I was done, like he wanted me to sign another contract, and I was like, no, I'm done. And I was out of nowhere, I just sort of broke down in tears because like you sort of know that that's like the end of your career. It's like you always know that day is going to come at some point. But I was happy that I was the one making the call. Wasn't a matter of like nothing, no contract sort of thing to make you retire. So I was sort of some regards like going out on my terms. So that was a good thing. But yeah, the fire just wasn't there anymore. Everything before, like whether it be downhill or four cross, BMX, enduro, like there was always that real hunger to be the best I could be there. And when that's not there, that's when you know it's time. So
Yeah.
easy decision in the end.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll go over all the different things you've done and how you started in a minute. But question I've got for you really is, obviously you just mentioned all them different disciplines that you've done. Like looking back now, um, did you have a favorite discipline? Would you think, or were they all as good as each other? And because obviously you focused a lot on the BMX when the Olympics first come around. You focused, hugely on four cross when you were dominating that, and then obviously in the early days of downhill, you were focused on that. Is the one that you were more, you know, really passionate about and really liked doing more than any of the others?
Honestly, I think it was like everything I had, like, I loved in different ways, like you said, early on, it was all about downhill. I think 2002 was my first year racing overseas, and I was all about downhill. And that was the first year that four cross came in, replaced the dual.
Hmm.
And I did not care about it one bit. Then it was all downhill. That's all I wanted to do. And then I started taking four cross a little more seriously in 2004, just because I was getting some good results in downhill, but I was putting too much pressure on myself. Early 20s guy, just like wanting to make his name kind of deal, and some good results, but then a lot of finals where I was just crashing or having a bad run or something, just making mistakes. And then so it started to work out well that I was doing four cross as well, and that would sort of take a bit of pressure off the downhill because my mindset was just like two chances in one weekend to have a good result. So
Yeah.
when I started getting some results in four cross, then my downhill started picking up. And then 2005, I had a really good downhill and four cross season. But it was from that was it World Champs in 2005 in Livigno. I got second to Lopes at World Champs, and I really hadn't done any specific training. I was just having fun riding my bike and racing, and watching back that final too. Like I could have shut him down so easily if my mindset was more aggressive and more like it was years later. I could have easily shut him down in that first corner because I had a wheel ahead sort of thing, and I sort of just let him have the inside. And watching that back, I was like, man, if I actually put some effort into this, and I can do good at this. So
Yeah.
it was sort of all about four cross from now on. But then it's sort of just the way I've always been too. Like once I feel like I've achieved my goals and like got to the where I want to get in something, I sort of want to move on to something else. And that's how it was when so I'd won the four cross World Cup for 3 years in a row and won the world champs and all that. And then I decided I wanted to go back to downhill since I always sort of never really felt like I fulfilled my potential in downhill. So then I decided to go back to downhill in 2012. But the fire wasn't like it started off being there, but for some reason it was the same sort of thing as later on in my career. Like the fire just wasn't really there for it.
Mhm.
Um, and it kind of was, but like then at the same time, by mid-season, when they said the Enduro EWS was going to be a thing, and I'd seen a few Enduro races, and it really had me interested because that's what I always said to people. That's what I would have done. That's what I would have gone after from a teenager as a kid. If that would have been an option then. So
Okay.
I mean, just the all-round aspect of that, of like, fitness, skills, and what I loved about training for it is like you could do a bunch of different things and it'd all help endure in some different way. So you weren't pigeonholed into like just doing this training or that training. You could do a whole range of things, and it all had a way of coming together to help you for enduro. So
Yeah.
I just love the training for it, and I love the all-round aspect of it, and so I guess in that regard, enduro probably was my favorite,
Mhm.
but I mean, they're all for different reasons, and of course, BMX in there too. Like BMX just started about as something that I wanted to use when I decided that I wanted to get good at four cross. I just thought, oh, this will be fun to do a bit of cross training and just some extra racing in the off season. And I was always sort of one. If I just ride one bike all the time, that sort of led to the multi-discipline thing as well. Was I kind of get sick of just riding one thing all the time, and I still do. I'm still out on the do downhill runs and then XC riding, road riding, and sometimes at the BMX track, still that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
whatever's going is always good. So just anything to keep mixing it up it always keeps me interested. So BMX was good for that at the time as well, and it sort of worked out, I guess. So
Yeah, not half. And did you grow up doing BMX as a kid? Is that
I did, yeah. Yep. So BMX, I raced BMX from just before my fifth birthday until I think I just turned 12,
okay?
and then after that. So we were going to, like, my family, my dad raced and my brother raced, and we were probably 30 weekends a year racing different, races every weekend, traveling to wherever it was. And just got to a point where, and the other big family sport growing up as a kid was water skiing. So
Okay.
if we weren't BMXing, we were water skiing. And it got to the point where I just kind of wanted to be a normal kid for a while. Had enough of just going away traveling for something every weekend. So when I was 13, I didn't ride a bike at all when I was 13, just that one year, and then started getting sort of a bit itchy for it again. So and that's when so I got out of BMX. My dad had a big crash, and my brother had stopped riding. So then it turned out that I was the only one still racing. So we ended up going to fewer and fewer races.
Yep.
And then because of my brother had this big water skiing crash, and the physio said to him that he should do cycling to help strengthen his groin muscles that he'd injured and everything. And just so happened to be dad had got to the age where he was putting on a few kilos as much as he wouldn't like to admit it. But dad had bought like a $500 giant that dad was going to get fit on again, which
Yeah.
never happened. So the bike just sat there. And anyway, my brother to rehab his groin, he started going off riding in the bush on dad's mountain bike, and one of the neighbor kids had a bike as well. And after about a week of them going off afternoons after school, talking about how much fun it was on the mountain bike, I decided I wanted to join in on them. So all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, dad had bought my brother a bike, and I took over that cheap giant, and that's how it all sort of started on the mountain bike when I was 13. So
Wow. And where you grew up and where you were living then, was it good for mountain biking? Was the
well,
trails
yeah,
around?
I still live in the same place actually. The trails are a lot more like it's a whole trail network bike park sort of thing now. So back then was very limited. I think that was 90. We saw the Atlanta Olympics for XC, so it was a little bit of a weird thing going from BMX racing to XC racing. But when you see something on the Olympics, yeah, and that was your perception of mountain biking at the time. It wasn't until later on that I even knew about downhill and dual slalom and all that sort of stuff. So started off just racing XC, and yeah, it was just like the trails were very basic then, a lot of just fire roads and some single track, but nothing like you see today, as I'm sure, that's the same sort of thing all over the world. Things have just evolved so much. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, full rigid cantilever brakes, all that fun stuff. So
Yeah.
good for building skills anyway. The Panaracer smoke and dart.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Brilliant. I mean, it's looking at the sport today, obviously, do you still, I imagine you still watch all the downhill World Cup action and
Yeah,
stuff. Um, it's, I think the last few years, for me anyway, it's like a full new era of young kids coming through
yeah,
that, when I started doing mountain biking and you started doing mountain biking, um, at the time, sort of downhill was quite new. Even sort of going back to like the very early pioneers of downhilling, like John Tomac and Tinker Juarez in the cross country and all those guys. They'd come from other disciplines, hadn't they? Whether it was BMX or
yeah,
road and cross country or whatever it was. Whereas I think, now you've got these kids that have basically grown up doing mountain biking because,
yeah, yeah,
the
totally.
accessibility to bikes and stuff at a young age now and bike parks and everything else.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of changing. Um, but do you think when you started into doing the mountain biking, at first did it seem a little bit like kooky and weird, like for you from coming from a BMX background, which was looking when I first started, I'd done some BMX and then I did a little bit of motocross, but I'd never done any like cross country racing or anything like that. So even the clothes that people wore and like, the weird
Index.
pedals and yeah, helmets and
Yeah.
stuff. It all seemed a bit strange to me, but the actual bike riding was so good. It was like, and then obviously, things evolved and it became its own thing and became, super cool. But was it kind of similar to you?
Yeah, not really. Actually, I always thought it was pretty cool. Actually, I remember my first ever mountain bike race I saw. We're at an open day BMX race at Ipswich, which is just an hour down the road from me, and they had some in like the lunch break. They held some sort of mountain bike race, which was just like doing loops in like the area sort of around the BMX track. They rode on the BMX track for a bit, and went off and did their sort of loop, and it was a bit
Okay.
of a sideshow thing, and it did look a bit kooky, but I remember thinking, oh, that's kind of cool, like seeing them come down these steep hills off in the bush and bouncing down the hill, and I was sort of thought that was kind of cool. So,
Yeah.
but no, I think right at that time, and like you were saying, like I think my advantage early on was having that BMX background. And I kind of felt like when I was, 19, 20, that I was the new generation because you are sort of thing at the time. You've got that advantage of having grown up racing BMX, and whereas some other guys just went straight into mountain bikes when they were already kind of, they might have been like 30 at the time, and all they'd done is ride mountain bikes for 5 or 10 years. So just having that skills background, but that was sort of my advantage at the time, having grown up on a bike. So it kind of felt a little like came to me quite naturally, I guess. And just the fact that I didn't mind crashing. Like my very first ride I ever did, like I got stuck in like a rain rut, flipped over the bars and got up, and I had just blood gushing down my forearms and everything. And it didn't worry me one bit. I just thought, oh, that was kind of cool. So, and I was back out there the next day doing the same thing. So I knew I was pretty hooked at that point from day one. So, um, but yeah, like you said, the new kids, like I had this real light bulb moment when I was in Whistler with Curtis in 2017 or 18, I think. And we were riding Ride Don't Slide. And this kid came down. We were just sort of checking out a section. And this kid came down. He could have been no older than 10 or 11 on a little 20-inch dual suspension thing. And he was obviously just like afternoon after school, just, going for a run down Ride Don't Slide with dad. And he wasn't exactly like shredding the trail, but just the fact he was riding it and looked comfortable riding it. I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, they're doing that young now. Like, what's it going to be like in another 10 years? And yeah, so I think there's going to be, even you see guys like Jackson now is absolutely killing it. We've seen him on video edits on his little Strider bike when he was 3 or 4 years old. I remember seeing him definitely when he was, 3 or 4. So seeing
Yeah.
him stay with it and get to where he's at now is super cool. So,
Yeah.
and there's just going to be more guys like him coming through, definitely.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this year especially, the World Cup. There's always been fast juniors, hasn't there? That
Yeah.
have mix it with the elite times and stuff over certain generations. There was Nicholas Fulio back in the day, and then Sam Hill was putting in times that were as fast as the elites and stuff, and now there's three, four, five juniors this year that could fully mix it with the top five elites as
Yeah, I think that the juniors at the moment seem to be exceptional. Actually, like they're right there with the elite men, and it's pretty amazing to see. So,
well.
just be interesting to see. Like from this time, it's going to be interesting to see how they progress to the next level. If they from where they're at now, it all kind of becomes a bit of a mental game. If they've got the sort of the mentality to keep progressing that little bit further, then they're going to push it to a new level,
Yeah,
or they might not find that new level and they might just sort of stagnate. But
yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see how they all progress from where we are now. So.
Yeah, definitely. And a good question for you for sure because we'll get into some of the training that you've done and how you train other people and stuff. But one good thing about downhill that I've always liked is there's so many different body types and physiology that people have in downhill that there's not one. BMX, you've got to be, especially nowadays, you've got to be smashing the gym, you've got to be super strong and explosive. But in downhill, you've got someone like Amory Pirion and Loic Bruni that look like they hit in the gym all the time. They're super strong, and then you've got Jackson who basically still looks like he's a 13, 14-year old kid kind of thing,
Yeah.
and he can go as fast as them guys. With the skills that he's got on the bike. What what's your thoughts on all that with downhill? How do you go about you know training somebody for downhill?
I just think like with every you can look at any rider and they've all got their strengths and weaknesses. There's going to be one area like the bigger guys, like certain sections are going to suit them. Little guys, certain sections are going to suit them. And overall, I think that's what makes a good course as well. Like look at Andorra, for example. Like times are super tight. That made for awesome racing. The top section undoubtedly suits bigger guys, and the bottom section probably suits little guys. So they all sort of came together in the end. So that just makes for some good riding and good racing. Good to see the splits and all that too. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I just think you can. just take a different rider, like Richie's another example, like certain tracks, like he's going to be amazing on certain tracks, and then other tracks he feels like he's struggling because he's maybe a bit too big. But even that, I think it's gotten in his head a little bit this year. So um, there's different things that you can always do for training. I think the best way for training is just consolidate your strengths and work on your weaknesses. That was always my philosophy when training myself, was like, you just need to make sure your strengths are still there, do enough to make sure they're still there, and then you got to be brutally honest with yourself and like be, all right, this is my weakness. What can I do to strengthen my weakness? So whether that be like, maybe if you are a bit too big, like try to lean up a little bit, and but you got to maintain your powers your thing. You got to maintain your power, which then it becomes sort of important with your diet and whatever. But yeah, just like if you can work on your weaknesses, and then skills is the same thing. If you feel like you're weak in a certain area, like if it's raining and you feel like your weakness is the mud, get out and ride in the mud. Like doesn't matter what it's like. Like if you're going to get muddy and cold and wet, who cares? Just get out there and do it. So
Yeah.
not a lot of people are actually very comfortable with doing that. So I think it all comes down again to that whole mentality thing. Like if you're willing to put in the work and the effort, and I've always said again, it's like it's amazing what the human body can adapt to if you make it.
Mhm.
If you really force yourself to do something, and but be smart about it. Don't just like bury yourself day after day after day. But if you really push yourself mentally and physically to getting better, then it's amazing what you can force yourself into doing. So I think that's something that definitely worked for me. So something that when I'm training people, that's something that I try to push them in that direction. But it's a little frustrating because sometimes it's like if they're not doing the work or something, like it's on them essentially at the end of the day if they do it or not. They've got to want to do it and they've got to put in the effort. But you try to give them the tools to do what they need to do, but
Yeah.
then you've got to leave it up to them to get the job done at the end of the day. So that's kind of the hard thing being coaching some of the guys, is like not having that control on race day. Like you like to control what you can with like what they're doing, but that's what I loved about racing myself. Like if you have a bad race or something, there's no one to blame but yourself. So
Yeah.
that's why I never really liked team sports, and because I didn't like when, you know, growing up, I played a lot of basketball, for example. There'd be one guy on the team who was a ball hog or something. He'd always take the shot and miss, and that used to frustrate the hell out of me. So that's where individual sports I was always drawn to them because it was all on you. So there was no hiding. If you did crap, it was on you. If you did good, it was all you. So
Yeah.
that's what I loved about it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And do you think there's, especially in downhill, because I think downhill has so many aspects to being a fast downhill rider. Obviously there's no doubt about it. You've got to be fit. You've got to be training. You've got to have the bike skills. You've got to have the balls for it. You've got to have the mental capacity for it. What do you think that shifts at a certain age? Like obviously, you see some of the juniors at the moment, see some of the interviews and just the way they ride the bikes, and they all just look like they're having fun. Like Jackson looks like he's having fun on his bike. The two Alran brothers look like they're just throwing shapes all the way down the hill. You've got Tyler Waite on Yeti, and you've got Ollie Clark. They all look like they're doing an Instagram clip on the race runs. They just look like
Yeah,
they're having amazing fun. Do you think
yeah.
do you think there's an age and a point where it becomes a bit more serious, and then it can get into your head, or what's your thoughts on that?
So I think that's like kind of comes back to what we were talking about just before with there's so many at that age that have the talent and everything, and riding for fun works for so many guys. Like you've got to maintain that riding for fun. If you're not having fun, you're not going to do well. So you've got to maintain that aspect. But there's always a point where, you sort of with like Bruni when he was a kid, everyone saw his talent when he was a junior, but he
Yeah,
wasn't the fittest guy and everything. Like he needed work in so many areas, but he got it done, and then look what he did when he started taking it seriously. Whereas some other guys might not have had that mindset and that mentality that like, I've got the tools, the big tools are like the skills and everything, because not everyone can get that. So having that is the biggest thing. But from there, you've got to really put in the work to, do the little one percenters to help you get those little steps above. And then you put that all together with the mental aspect. And that's what someone like Bruni does so well now. And Jackson's doing it now too, just seeing them back and forth each week. And like so many guys, like I was saying to one of the guys here at home, which race was it? Okay, there was one where just this season where Loris qualified first, and then finals the next day, and he was 15th. So and
Yeah,
he's always there too. But then that just shows like how on you need to be on race day to like always be there at the pointy end on the podium sort of thing. So
yeah,
that's the switch. That's how it can be one day to the next, like go from first to 15th kind of thing. So
yeah.
that just shows how switched on and how precise you need to be and have all your ducks in a row to be really performing on the day.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think as a pure trainer, if you were say, all the current crop of guys that are doing well at the downhill, whether it's junior or elite, um, while we're talking about Jackson, for instance, obviously, Jackson's just looking at him, he's such a slight guy, but he's so light on the bike. Would you be suggesting to him, he needs to put on some power as he progresses through the sport and some, some bulk? Like, you look at him versus Amory and Bruni and they just, they look like dudes that go to the gym every day, and he looks like he's just a kid eating flipping sweets and doing whips on his bike. It's pretty phenomenal. Do you think as he gets older, he'll have to sort of change the way he trains and rides? It's quite interesting to me to figure that out.
I think it's honestly impossible to know if you're not coaching him, which obviously I'm not, but
Yeah,
so without knowing his numbers and everything that he does, like it's impossible to know. I'll use Casper Woolley as an example. Like when he was with Yeti with Enduro, like we were doing some sprint testing one day, and he blew my. He was putting out 1,750 watts, and he is a tiny dude. He was like, I don't know what his weight was at the time, but I could not believe a guy that small. You'd never pick it looking at him. Like
yeah,
he was so small, and you would never know that he could do that much power. But say Jackson might be the same. He might actually be doing some. He's got to be doing something pretty impressive to be at least in touch at like Leogang and Enduro. He was right there in touch at the top. So there's something there that like just because like like coming back to the BMX thing, like I've seen some guys over the years with like twig legs
Mhm.
and they put down some phenomenal power. Like you'd never pick it looking at them, but they train hard, and you see them in the gym, and they just don't put on the muscle mass. Like I think
Yeah.
of David Herman, Mark Willers, and BMX, like those two, little skinny legs, but man, they were strong. So strong with leg speed. So it's impossible to know exactly what someone's doing until you actually see their numbers. So he might
Yeah,
be there. Just don't know.
yeah, I guess, yeah, some people, Kyle Bennett, who I think was, one of the best ever. He wasn't a big stocky dude, was he? Or neither's
No, he was pretty. Yeah,
Kyle White.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah, and what just going back to the BMX then. So obviously, you do BMX as a kid. You changed over pretty young, really. Um, how did you always stick riding a BMX, or
So
did you?
yeah, well, yeah. I always stayed. I didn't ride a BMX at all, like an actual BMX bike, but I always kept going to the track on my hardtail. So I kept riding BMX tracks. Like every week, I'd be at the track at least once, just doing some laps, and it became pretty good cross training for mountain biking. So I'd always get out to the track once a week, and it was good too because it was a fun way to. It was about a 25 half an hour ride to get to the track, and then you do like an hour of sprints and skills at the track, and then you'd ride home again. So ended up being a good little training session. So when I look back on sort of my junior years, like there was no real structure to it, but what I was doing was actually working quite well. So
Mhm.
um, I think just anytime like you do something that's fun and you can sort of get some skills that way. But yeah, I didn't ride a BMX bike itself until I was, it was 2000 2004. I got a BMX again. So
Right.
I would have been 21 when I got a BMX again.
What? Why did you get a BMX again? Did you want to do a bit more BMX racing, or was it just for?
Yeah, so I thought racing would be good for, and at first it was just like I just wanted to race locally. I had no aspirations to go to the Olympics. It was purely to just get faster for four cross. So I started just, I'd start by just going to the local gate night and doing gates and then some club racing and then be like, okay, I'm doing pretty good at this. So then I'd go down to Brisbane where there's a lot of fast guys and race some open days and that sort of stuff. And the first one I did, I won. And I was just like, okay, like that surprised me. And the funny thing was there was a guy, Michael Robinson, who you probably remember, who raced a bit of mountain bikes as well. And as a kid, I could not beat him. He's the same age as me, and he won everything as a kid. I couldn't beat him. And then I came back to BMX. I hadn't raced him for 8 or 9 years. Came back to BMX, and my first race against him, I think he still beat me, but I was right there on his tail. Like, and within 2 or 3 races, I was beating him every time. So, um, yeah, it was just, I think, well, when you look back on it too, you don't contemplate it when you're a kid, but I was the absolute runt of the class. Like you see all the state or national title, the final sort of, you get your plate
Yeah.
and, 1 through 8, and I'm like a foot shorter than everyone else standing there. And then, so at some point, I guess I grew and I caught up to everyone and then your strength comes along with that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think as well, like when I did get back into BMX, it was, and then especially when you're doing well, and it sort of surprised me, and then the motivation just took off from there. And then I started doing a lot more sort of sprint training and got back in the gym. Like I wasn't doing any gym. I was doing some gym for mountain biking, but nothing to build strength. It was all about just stability on the bike and just a little bit of extra strength, but nothing that was going to make my sprint any better or anything like that. So um, but yeah, that just snowballed into going from local races to then some state stuff and then doing some national rounds. And pretty soon I got myself on sort of the national high performance team. And I think I was probably the first guy started taking my training very seriously. I was probably the first guy to really start taking it seriously. Like my first national team camp for the training camp we went to and it was we'd been there, it was the second night we were there, so we'd been there a full day and another day and we still hadn't done anything that really was riding bike or we hadn't really done anything and everyone just, so we went to dinner and then all the guys decided they were going to go out on the town sort of thing and including Sean Dwight who was the coach at the time and then I decided I wasn't going to do that and they all left and I jumped on my bike. It was 9 o'clock at night and because we hadn't done anything for a couple of days I just started doing a sprint session and then
No.
all of a sudden, some of them are coming back home, like, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, we're meant to be at a training camp. We're
Yeah.
not doing anything. Like, so I'm gonna train. So, and I know I upset a few guys early on because I was a sort of a guy that
Yeah.
I got along with everyone fine, but I know a few guys BMXs kind of have a bit of a habit of being a bit backstabby, especially the bunch at the time did, and I upset a few guys by being the new guy that came along and just sort of was beating them straight away and became
Yeah.
I don't know. It just upset a few guys. So that was fun too. I loved that aspect of it. Just like sort of doing my own thing, being quiet, and so I was sort of. It's not that I was intimidated by them, but they're all very clicky and sort of like very.
Yeah.
Um, I
But
don't know. Like they'd known each other for so long, and I was the new guy. So
no one wants
yeah,
the guy coming in and beating them at what they do they? You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's always a
I mean,
hard.
I got along with them. I had no personal issues with anyone. We all got along fine, but it was just that weird sort of tension was always there, which I think then when so Sam Willoughby, that's how I got to know Sam. He was on the junior development team as like the um he was like 15 or 16 when I met him, and I was just like he was riding the biggest piece of crap you've ever seen. His mongoose. He'll still tell you stories about it too. Like it was the biggest hunger junk you've ever seen. But he was so damn fast, and like you just see the skills, his gait, the way he like dedicated himself, his focus on race day, and just so happened to be at a national round in Liverpool and Sydney, and Sam in the semi-final broke a pedal,
Yeah.
and he knew that I was running Shimano pedals. So before his final, he came up to me and asked if I had a spare set of pedals that he could throw on his bike for the final. And that's how we sort of met. He didn't even know that I'd been watching him really closely at every race, like wanting to approach him about because I knew Yeti were going to be. I was riding a RevTech at the time actually because I liked the geometry of it. And but Yeti had the prototype in the works, and when they knew I was getting pretty serious about BMX, and I knew I was going to approach Sam about getting on the Yeti as well and helping him out as much as I could because I've always loved sort of finding new young guys, young talent, and trying to help them if I see there's an area I think I can help them in. So just so happened when he approached me there, we met, and then just after that, I stayed in contact with him, and before you knew it, like talked to him more, and he was on one of the Yeti prototypes. We only me and him, we got the two
Yeah.
Yeti prototype BMXs, and of course, the rest is history with him. So he's now I still talk to him like all the time. I was just talking to him a couple of days ago. Him and Elise just had their first kid, little Bo. So yeah, it was pretty exciting news. So he's a dad now,
Brilliant.
and obviously, had his accident, which is super sad. But he's just adapted to life really well, and his mindset and mentality is just amazing. So, but anyway, the whole point of my story was like when someone like Sam came along, like, and we were very similar with our mentality and mindset, and we just like clicked and gelled straight away. So we kind of did our own thing, and all the other guys would be off partying and doing a bit of training, and we were just training together and just like working really hard to progress. And so I always knew he was going to be good, but I even then, like, I knew he was going to be good, but I never knew he was going to be as good as he was. So
Yeah.
just seeing how he progressed, I was always so proud of what he did.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, going back to the BMX thing, when you first jumped back on the BMX bike, how long did it take you to get used to the 20-inch again? Because
Oh, this is a fun story. So everyone used to say to me, like, we can't believe that you go from the mountain bike to the BMX to the mountain bike to the BMX. And what I always said to them was like, you don't see when I've been on the mountain bike for a block of races, you don't see me sneaking out to the BMX track at 5:30 in the morning when I know no one else is going to be out there and riding like an absolute Gumby for the first half an hour. Like I can still remember like coming down the first straight at home and just the first time trying to jump the double on the first straight again. Like you'd be so uncomfortable on the bike after not being on it for might have been like a month or two that you're not on the bike. You're just riding purely the mountain bike. You get back on, you just do a big sort of bar hump because like you don't know how to sort of position yourself on the bike, and it like you look around like, did anyone see that? That was so embarrassing. But every time within half an hour to 45 minutes, like you're back sort of flowing on the bike again. It was just those initial laps where you're just like, oh, here we go. This is gonna be a show if anyone's watching because it was terrible. But
yeah.
like you just like if you stay on them often enough, because it was sort of like the same thing with, in the day of like riding downhill and four cross. So you'd go from downhill practice usually straight to four cross practice. And I remember like Willingen in Germany, like the downhill track was all just jumps and big floaty jumps. And the way you jump a downhill bike is so different to the way you jump a hardtail. And those first couple laps on, because like that had some massive jumps, that four cross track.
Yeah.
And then the first couple laps just back on like instantly going from the downhill bike to the hardtail. And then just having to hit those doubles first lap was a pretty scary sort of a experience. But as long as you say if you're on them like constantly, one bike in the morning, one bike in the afternoon, it's not too bad. But if you spend like a month or two on one bike and then try to get back on the other one, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Just that you don't see what goes on in the background with the riding like a goon for half an hour, but there's plenty of that going on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I've never done any of the disciplines at the level you did, but I remember when I sort of finished mountain biking in the um or doing it as regularly in sort of '03, '04, and then I went to watch a BMX race that my friends were doing. They weren't racing elite, they were just in their age categories, but they were we were all sort of in our early 30s, and I went to watch them at it was in Holland, it was the Worlds in Holland, I think it was in
Yeah, that was
04.
2004. Yeah, yep. Warwick Stevenson won.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, he did.
That was right when I was getting into BMX. That was like right when I was good because I remember like I didn't know him as a kid, but I remember the name from because he was a little bit older than me, but I still remember the name from when I was really young. So
Yeah.
seeing him in the world title was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I hadn't been to a proper BMX race for years, and just the atmosphere and it just was fun. It was different. And I came home from that race. It was actually I'd injured myself mountain biking. That was it, and I went to watch. Anyway, when I could get back on the bike, um, obviously first of all I grabbed grabbed a cruiser. I think I got a Haro cruiser, something off somebody. Because I always found that the cruiser wasn't as hard to adapt to
Yeah,
from the
yeah,
mountain
yeah,
bike.
yeah,
So I think I did a BMX race. I think I did like the British Champs at the end of that year. In the 30 and over class or whatever, and I did pretty well at it. And then I just decided to, I just having fun. There was no pressure from it or anything, and I went with some of my friends and decided to do the national series in '05. But halfway through the winter, one of my mates said, "Why don't you just get a 20 inch as well?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know." Anyway, I ended up getting one and flipping so scary. I got used to it pretty quickly, but and the tracks have evolved so much from then to now.
yeah,
I don't think
yeah,
it would have been at all possible to do that now, for me anyway. But I remember, I was pretty fit and strong from mountain biking. Similar to you, as a kid, I was only small and had no power. Still haven't got a lot of power now, but um, I I was able to do better at BMX when I was older than when I was a kid.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but I remember being at a race. I think it was a European Championships in Cheddar, and I'd managed to make the final in the 19 and over expert. So I was kind of racing down a class, but not, in elite. And I remember being like in about third or fourth, and I was going faster than normal. Hit a double where you had to squash it, whereas nowadays everything's so big, and I just landed in a manual and flipping went all the way to the next jump, bonked the jump and jumped off the track, and my mates are going, "What are you doing? Like trying to land in a manual in the middle of your race?" And I was like, "Dude, there was no intent." I just at full speed on certain tracks, I just wasn't that
yeah,
good on the 20
yeah.
inch.
Oh man, seeing BMX now too, it's the same thing as downhill. Like even like when I was going for the Olympics and that, like Luke Medill had his track in his yard. That was the only supercross hill in Australia at the time. And actually, so I didn't have the funds or anything like the way to manufacture a full 8 meter ramp. So me and my dad got out there and on the side of the hill at home, Dad got his all his like trigonometry skills, his math skills out, and buddy just had his little sort of his levels and his like all the lines. So we built anyway. We built a because the ramp was it was at 16 degrees on the pad, and
Yeah.
then went 18 degrees for 8 meters, and then it dropped off to the 28 degrees. And
Wow.
so the most important part was the first four cranks to the kink.
Yeah.
So it was like let's just build a ramp that's the first four cranks. So I had an 8 meter ramp or 8 meters long
Yeah.
at the 18% gradient
Yeah.
with so everything's set up on the right angle, same as a supercross ramp. And because that was, apart from Luke's track, that was the closest thing in Australia at the time to a supercross track. I had my little ramp and then I had like four jumps, like four pretty big jumps actually. They were probably 40 foot, 40 foot gap, end to end with like, if you saw some, they look sketchy as hell. If I show you some videos of it, they're sketchy as hell. So put it this way, Sam Willoughby wouldn't jump them for about 3 days when he was there. So they were sketchy. But I was
And how
figured like
long?
if you could be comfortable on that, you'll be comfortable on any supercross track. So that was my whole idea of building it. But because that was my ramp was the second closest thing to a supercross ramp in Australia with a random gate because random gates had just come in too.
Awesome.
Mark Wheeler actually he rang me up and he's like, I need some time on the closest thing I can get to a supercross ramp. And he came over and stayed for about 4 days at my place just to ride my little 8 meter ramp.
And what year would this have been?
That was 2007,
Okay, so this is the year before the Olympics in
year
Beijing.
before the Olympics, yeah. And so at that time, my start hill, my little first four crank ramp was the second closest thing in the country to a supercross track. And like now you see kids. Last I knew, there was a rule you couldn't ride the 8 meter hill till you're 14 or something like that. I can't remember the exact age, but you see kids growing up on them now. Whereas, like my first time on an 8 meter ramp was at the Beijing test event in 2007. I'd never been on an 8 meter ramp until first practice at that race. So other guys had, but I just figured, oh, it'll be fine. I'll adapt. And like my first time down the ramp, I was like, holy crap! Like it was sketchy.
Yeah.
It felt sketchy, but then you adapt super quick, and then racing actually ended up going really well there. So
Yeah, no,
got
no.
third at the World Cup, and that actually automatically qualified me for the Olympics because it held a lot of weight because it was on the Olympic track.
Yeah.
So that was a good weekend, that one. But yeah, it was such a learning curve at the time, and the tracks, like, you can find some old videos of the World Cups then, and the tracks were literally built the week of the race. They had soft pockets everywhere. They were bumpy as hell, and you can sort of tell the riding looks like a little bit sketchy because the tracks were sketchy.
Yeah.
The tracks are so dialed now, and the racing looks amazing, but it was just like it seemed so cutting edge at the time, so
Yeah.
sort of so relevant to what we were doing. But looking back on it now, it was so ghetto. But we made do.
Me too. And so, at what point did you decide, and did you have focus on going to the Olympics? When did that happen for you?
Um, I always said at first that I was just going to build experience and like get a bit quicker and focus on London for 2012.
Yeah.
But then I think um, there was early 2007. I went to America and did some races and got some pretty good results in, made pretty much all the mains I did. I raced in Sarasota, Orlando, somewhere else, and I only missed one main. And back then there was like you'd have the super class, I think it was called super class, and double A pro.
Mhm.
And yeah, basically I was making all the mains and had some good results. I got a couple of thirds. I didn't do any better than third, but I got a couple of thirds at my first ever races.
Unreal.
And so that was Matt, and that was obviously, I'd never raced BMX in America. My very first time racing BMX in America, and you're there in the gate with like Bubba Harris and Mike Day and Donnie Robinson, Cole Bennett, Warwick Stevenson, all these, like Randy Stumphauser, all these guys who were just like you've been watching for years in videos, and like first moto, you're in the gate with them all, and then you see that you're right there with them, so that instantly gives you some confidence, and then from there, I think my first ever World Cup I got third at, and
Unreal.
then what was there after that? Then made a couple more mains at some other, got made the main, but had a bad final in the one in Adelaide in Australia, and I got second in Copenhagen, which was the last World Cup before the Olympics. And but anyway, so I think early on after that US trip, and then I was winning a lot of the national rounds in Australia, and then because I was beating the other guys, it just became a natural progression that, all right, I'm just going to go for the Olympics now. Like I wasn't really thinking about it seriously until probably, I don't know, maybe 18 months before, I guess. And then I sort of knew it was a possibility. And when I got third at Beijing, and like Sharples just said to me, Sharples was a national coach at the time, and he just said like, unless someone betters that result, like you're in the team basically. Like that was because it was on the track and it was a podium with the selection criteria. That was pretty much an automatic qualifier. So I just knew from that third that day, it was just like I'm going to the Olympics, and it just the focus became about that. I didn't really race much mountain biking in 2008. Focused on that. Still did a couple of full cross races, but just put everything into BMX that year, which was I think it was worth it. So
Definitely.
the Olympics is like an amazing experience. Like just the people you see in the village, like you're walking along and like, oh, there's Usain Bolt, and he's just like walking along, and like Pele was walking along, he was in there with like his entourage as some sort of an ambassador, and all the like tennis players and like all these amazing, like Michael Phelps, you just see him just walking along, sort of thing, like amazing athletes, and you just see them like they're just on a normal Tuesday sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing. If you're into sports, I've always been into like I just watch whatever sports on. If there's sport on TV, you can guarantee I'm just going to sit down and watch it pretty much. So pretty amazing for me to see all those athletes and whatever. So,
I'll definitely.
but it's a little bit disillusioning for I've seen so many guys as well put all their effort into the Olympic dream, and they go, masses of money in debt, and they get nothing in return. They might get to the Olympics, and that's great. I was sitting next to a guy who, on the plane flight home, he was a rower, I think he was, and I can't remember his name, but he said that was his third Olympics, Beijing, and he's like, we've got a sixth, a fifth, and a fourth, and he's like, I've got to go for the next one because surely we're going to get third, and I'll get my medal. But then he was telling me how he was 30 years old at the time, and he was like hundred and some $1,000 in debt from just chasing the Olympic dream, had no qualifications, didn't know what he was going to do beyond rowing. And I was just kind of like, I mean, it's cool that he's going after it, but I kind of remember thinking like that's a little bit sad at the same time, like because no one would ever remember him, sort of thing. And
Yeah,
he lived his life, and that was cool. He lived what he wanted to do, but
yeah.
it's a little, yeah. Put it this way, like when it came crunch time for London in 2012 and the politics of like the selection and everything again, I was kind of done with it already. Like I wasn't really enjoying just being back on the mountain bike from 2009 onwards, and just didn't really want to go back after that.
No,
Sort of
fair.
felt like I've been there and done it again.
I mean, it's incredible. You're one of the, the few people that I can think of that is able to, be at that super high level in a short period of time, which is, amazing and just shows you, your racecraft and dedication and everything else. But there's BMX guys that haven't achieved what you did at the Olympics. That's all they've ever done. You know what I mean? Whereas you've jumped in and out of so many different disciplines. But when you were at the Olympics, was it? Did you treat it as a normal race that you'd done before, or was there added pressure? Was it different?
Um, I'd say like yes and no, because like you do have a sensation of like this is the race that we've all been, going towards for the last couple of years, sort of thing. So there's that pressure. I've always gotten like I'll get just as nervous for like a local race as a World Cup or World Champs or anything. I don't really get any more nervous
Yeah.
because like every time I raced, if I'm rocking up, if I show up on a race day, I want to be 100%. I want to give everything I've got, which again comes back to the whole when I knew I was done with the whole e-bike thing. Like I just it wasn't there. So that's when I knew it was time to call it a day. But like for
So
me, it was just easy to get focused and like, but I never saw any additional pressure from it being the actual Olympics. You did feel nervous for like, I think more the thing was like just that general sort of build up of nerves, knowing that it was getting closer to the race that you've been building towards for so long. And so it was like, from the time we had a 2 week training camp at Luke Medill's place on his supercross track before flying out to Beijing. So, and from the time we got to Luke's, it was sort of this slow build up. And then we sort of, you're a bit nervous every day because you're like, you wanted to make the most of every training session at that point. So honestly, it was really hard to just like try and sort of, I guess, like dish out your energy. Like it was, you didn't want to like get too into one session. And because before that as well, we'd had this whole training block in Chula Vista. So we went from training block in Chula Vista on the Olympic replica track to Luke Medill's on his Olympic replica track. And so all these things you're seeing them as like this big important block end up just being like probably 6 weeks of just slow, nervous energy build up to the Olympics. And I remember the worst thing was it was like the quarters on the first day. Sorry, qualifying on the first day was qualifying and quarters, and then the second day was semis and the final. So, but then what happened was it rained on the day that was meant to be the final, so everything got pushed back to the next day,
yep,
and that day in between was just like the worst day.
was it?
That's where everything, because on one hand your body's kind of coming down from
Yeah.
the nerves of the day before you're ready to, you wake up, you've had this crap night's sleep, you wake up ready for race day. And then I remember going to the breakfast hall, and then it was announced that we weren't going to be racing that day because there'd been too much rain. And then the body just like fully comes down because you're not racing that day. And I just remember like feeling like death that afternoon before racing, like the body was like letting go of all this. But then you're trying to get amped up again the next day. So I don't know what it was like for everyone else, but I didn't feel too bad on race day. But man, it was just the longest, most stressful, like mentally fatiguing day that day off. So
No way.
that was the biggest sort of roller coaster of like mental and physical emotions I've had in so long. And I definitely had. So we did that race, the Olympics, and we flew home a few days later after the closing ceremony, and just like all those weeks and like weeks and weeks and weeks of that nervous energy build up. and then nothing. The goal, you're done. And I wouldn't say there was, you hear a lot of people talking about the post-Olympic depression, which I can definitely see how people fall into that. I was very lucky because 3 weeks later we had the Canberra World Cup where I was going to be on the four cross bike again. So I had sort of another little mini thing to help keep me a little bit focused, but I didn't touch a bike for like 2 weeks, and it wasn't until because I was just everything, my body was just recovering. I felt flat as a tack every day, all that nervous energy to come down after all that. And then it was about a week before going to Canberra. And I was like, I guess I better get back on the hardtail again. So I got back on the hardtail, did a few sprint sessions, just still until the day of the first day of practice in Canberra. I felt terrible. I felt like I was riding okay on the bike, but I just had no energy. And I was getting motivated for the race because like the Canberra crowd was pretty amazing, and like being the guy that they're all there to hopefully see win. And I had that pressure on myself. Like if I don't win, that kind of how it became in four cross, which honestly started becoming not so fun as that everyone sort of expected me to win so much that if you won, it was just like, oh, okay, I did what I was meant to do. And if I didn't, it was like I felt like I'd let everyone down, let myself down. Like even second was just like, it sounds arrogant, but that's just where my mindset was at. Like it was like winning or I didn't care. So
That
that
the one
became
that,
very mentally fatiguing.
was that the one that Sam Willoughby raced as well?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Sam got second to me at that. He
Yeah,
just jumped up. He didn't even know. So he'd come and like, obviously, like he'd spent a few times at my place for months at a time. Just we'd train together. And he'd love getting out on the motorbike. He loved getting out on, I had another downhill bike that I'd let him ride, but he'd never used the front brake in his life. So even doing downhill runs, he would not touch the front brake. So,
yeah.
and he's actually amazing on a downhill bike as well. He was doing some times on our downhill track that it would have put him top 30 at a national round.
Wow.
Like, so, and like on the second day on a downhill bike ever.
No way.
And so even then, at the four cross in Canberra, he would not touch the front brake because he was
No.
too scared that he was going to lock the front wheel and
Yeah.
but yeah, he was just like he could just jump on the bike and be quick on it straight away. So he was pretty amazing like that. He
Brilliant.
wanted to do more of the four crosses, but I think once he won his second junior world title, it just sort of
Yeah.
the BMX thing really kicked off, and he started getting contract offers thrown at him, and so it's a bit unfortunate that he never got to do more four cross World Cups. I know he was very keen, but yeah, it just never happened.
Fair enough. Yeah, it was cool to see him there, though.
Yeah,
It was
we
brilliant.
we had the best time that weekend. Eh? It was like
I
because
love.
I wanted to win, and he just wanted to have fun. He'd finished like his little trip to America at the end of the season with Grands and all that.
And
Actually, I think Grands coming
were you
up.
not scared
But
that he was going to beat you and on your home crowd or anything like that?
well, to be honest, like I knew he was the guy to beat, but I still felt confident that I had him covered at that point. So
Okay.
he always had this thing that like because he never beat me once in a BMX race until we raced together. So at Nerang every year in January they had the big sort of weekend in Nerang every year, and they always finish with the old three final thing, and so he still hadn't beat me in one race, but then that was after, so that was the start of 2000 and was it after the yeah it was 2000, that was the start of 2009, and I felt very nervous coming in because he'd just come off all this BMX racing, and I'd had my end of year after after the Olympics and the World Cup in Canberra and everything. I took probably 6 weeks completely off the bike, and then started doing like 4 weeks before Narang started doing a little bit of training again. And I was like, damn, I think Sam's probably going to get the better of me here. And sure enough, we got to the three final, and he beat me in the first one. I was like, well, there it is. He's beaten me now. And then the second one, he beat me again, but I had him the whole time, but he pipped me in a photo finish. And then he won the third main. I got second, and second to him. And then from there, like once he'd beaten me the first time, that was always his thing that he just wanted to beat me. And as soon as he did it, then he just went, he's like confidence took off. And
Yeah.
so I was glad I could help him out with that. So,
Yeah.
but like it's like it was the same thing with Richie. Like Sam and Richie, I sort of see as my two little big guys.
Yeah.
But there were two guys, and when they started beating me, I had no problem with it whatsoever. I was super happy for them. Like every time Richie beat me in an enduro, I was just like so happy for him. So
Brilliant.
because I just knew how good he was, I knew how hard he worked, and the same thing with Sam and Richie both just worked so hard, so much talent, so much focus and dedication, and seeing him put it all together and doing it just like made me feel really good. So I was never sad when they beat me.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because some people that are as competitive as you and have done as well as you, it's it's nice to know that you're as happy for them and you're not, there's no sort of jealousy inside. That's really good to hear.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
don't get me wrong. There's always someone that like that's the guy, like whether it be a teammate or something. Honestly, I've had a really good run with a lot of my teammates. Like I'd like to think I'm a pretty easy guy to get along with, and I've never had any real beef with any teammates. Like we've always gotten along. So, and I've always been happy for them to do well. But there's always been a few people that like when they beat you, it's like, oh, I didn't really want, like you keep it on the low down, but you're pretty upset with yourself that they beat you. So
and
I'm still
well,
happy for them, but
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and obviously you've probably had that in multiple disciplines, from BMX, four cross, downhill, everything. Can you name a few of them guys that you didn't like getting beat in those disciplines?
Well, I've made no secret of it. I've said it before with like four cross, it was always Lopes. Like, and Lopes, now I said it as well, like that because I think we had a very similar mindset. Like,
Yeah,
I was
definitely.
kind of very similar in the way we approach things, and I just sort of saw myself as the new generation sort of thing, and he didn't really like it when I started beating him. We had a moment at the Whistler, well, they called it bike across hill when there was still a four cross at Whistler,
Yeah.
and I was doing a little slingshot on the gate, which he didn't like, and
Is this
two
before
gates
the
from
random gate?
this yeah before the random gates, I was still doing a little bit of a slingshot,
Did
and
you do the
and he
slingshot? Did
didn't
you
like
learn
it
that?
anyway. So this was 2000 and that was 2006. So I was pretty serious about four cross then. And two gates in a row in practice, he parked his front wheel right on my back wheel. So when I pulled off the gate to do a slingshot, I'd like stall out, and twice in a row I'd pretty much flip the gate.
No
And the
way.
second time I was ready to start throwing punches at him. And EC came in and like separated us because I was just running over to him, and but anyway, like I got over it pretty quick, and but that was I ended up winning that race, and that was pretty satisfying. But we've had a lot of good chats since. I get along with Brian fine now, but we're just very similar people. So I just wanted to beat him, and he didn't want me to beat him, so there was always that kind of competitiveness there. But to be expected, like now that we're both older, like I just think it's super funny now. So, but like he always pushed me so much in training. Like I was always thinking about. He was the guy I was thinking about in training. Him and Prokop was because Prokop was pretty amazing in his heyday too.
He was. Well, I remember. Well, I think where were we? Maybe Caproon and I was, I did the downhill and the four cross or the dual, whatever it was at the time. But I never took it seriously like you guys did. To be fair, I just was having fun on my bike. I never w was there thinking I was going to win. Which looking back now, I should have probably put a bit more effort in. But I remember, I could do okay in the disciplines, but I remember the track in Caprun. So I think it would have been
I
about.
just watched that final the other day. Actually, I saw it somewhere, it popped up on YouTube, and I watched it because I was actually in hospital at the time because I crashed in downhill finals,
I wanted to
and
ask you about that. Was that the
yeah,
same race? Because
I had, that was one of my hugies of all time.
well, mate, I wanted to touch on that. So we'll touch on that now. But yeah, that was one of the first times I kind of had seen you and heard about you. Obviously, it was that new era of super fast young Aussie kids. There was Sam, there was you, there was Rennie, and it was like a changing of the guard. And that I think you were riding for. Were you riding for? Was it Dave
Orange
Merck's
Mad Cat,
Orange team?
Orange Mad Cats. So it became Iron Horse Mad Cats.
So it
It was Sean Heimdall's team.
was
So
Sean
I was
running that, or
friends.
was it before Sean was running it?
No, Sean was running it. So Dave Merton was the distributor in America. So Dave had
Yeah,
the American side of the Royal Orange team, and then Sean and Dave were friends, both from San Diego.
yeah,
And then Sean started up the Mad Cats Orange team, and I was friends with John O'Taylor and Ricky Boyer, who were the Orange importers in Australia,
yeah.
and they got in contact with Sean. So we got this fast young guy, and like you should give him a chance. And so back in the days before email, like I don't even remember how it came about, but like I just knew like I got a message from Jono saying be at your phone at like 10 o'clock on Wednesday because Sean's going to call. And then so I was sitting there at the phone waiting for the phone call, and sure enough, he calls and we just discussed a bit of the contract. He said, "This is what I can offer you." I said, "That sounds fantastic." And before you know it, I was off to America and Europe to race. So,
Unreal.
but yeah, um, but yeah, Caprun, yeah, that was my first time in Europe. I arrived, so Sharples picked me up at the airport on like the Tuesday night or something, and practice started on Wednesday. I'd never been in Europe in my life, and
At this point,
practice goes.
what results had you had in downhill at this point, just to give everyone a bit of
Um,
insight?
I had a few good Norba, and this is when Norbas, you get a lot of the Europeans racing Norbas as well. And probably my best US race results that year was, well, I'd gotten the two World Cups I'd done was Telluride in America and Colorado and Mont Saint Anne, and I got ninth in Telluride, and I got 16th with a crash at Mont Saint Anne. So
So
I
you
had,
were, you were
I had some speed. I definitely was overriding the bike in race runs and like getting a bit too loose and blow all flat pedals in, so I was blowing feet and all that fun stuff. And but the one result that really solidified that I could do well was there was the Durango World Cup, Durango Norba, which was on the World Cup track from the year before,
okay.
and I qualified first by like 8 seconds ahead of Kavarik and all those guys, and like I was
Still
just
on the
like
flats.
on the flats, yep. So, and then had a big crash in the final because again, I was convinced I could win by as much in the final, and had a huge crash going for it, which I didn't regret one bit. But anyway, that gave me a lot of confidence, and went to Caprun and qualified sixth, and same thing was just like I was feeling pretty amped up for a good race result, and there was the speed trap they had, and
Yeah,
there's
on
only
that
three of us.
super fast,
Super
like,
fast track, and only three of us got over 70k an hour through the speed trap. There was Claudio Calori, John Ciccoldi, and me were the only three to get over 70k an hour through the speed trap. And I blew my hand off the bar as I landed this compression about 10 meters past the speed trap
I
and just
remember.
cartwheeled through fences, ground sky, ground sky, ground sky. And then my elbow was broken. I had it was just gushing. Like I went to the ambulance, and the doctor was like, "Can you bend your elbow?" And I was like, yep." And every time I closed my elbow like that, like the veins, the arteries all open, and then blood was spurting out the my elbow. So we knew it was pretty bad at that point. But yeah. So I
Huge
was
crash. You kind
still.
of like, didn't you land on an off camber and then just washed out or something? It
I
looked
just remember there was the speed trap, and I was just like, I'm not braking this section. I was just like tucking, and I'm not braking. And I hit this compression, and my hand just blew off the bar. And then there was like a little sort of natural little ski jump kicker after that. So I hit that with one hand down by my front wheel, and then ground sky, ground sky.
yeah, I remember
So
it.
yeah,
Yeah, but
I've
yeah,
only ever seen the video of it. I saw it about a year later. I only ever saw the video of it. I've looked everywhere to try and find that video because I just want to see the crash again. But I've only ever seen it once.
surely
And
it was on
so if
a
anyone's got the video, I'd love to see it.
surely it, yeah, somebody must know, but wouldn't it have been on one of the like Sprung or Earth videos or something?
No, I've never seen it on a video. I remember seeing it on a Eurosport replay about a year later,
Okay. Yeah,
just randomly. I don't know even where I saw it, somewhere on the internet. But yeah,
yeah.
fun times that one.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that was kind of the era that with the four cross Pro Cop coming, wasn't it? And he was like fast from the
Mm.
get go.
Now,
Um,
watch that final just the other day, and they're talking about. 'Cause I think there was Lopes and EC, and I think Cedric and Prokop, and
yeah,
whoever was commentating, they just fully wrote Prokop off, and And I do think he ended up getting fourth. But I remember the next year in where was the next year? Lugano. Was that Lugano 2003?
Yes,
Yeah, and he won there. And I remember like because that
that
was
was
on Earth, or I think it was on that was the first Earth from 2003. And watching him ride watching him in the four cross, I didn't really because I ended up crashing at the first round in practice in Fort William at the World Cup and missed the entire season with a kidney injury.
yeah,
So I didn't really get to see any of the races because obviously there wasn't televised racing. Then you'd wait for the race results to come out on the internet. That was about it. But
yeah,
seeing Pro Cop ride in Earthed
yeah,
at World Champs, I just thought his style was so cool, and I just thought this guy's sick. Like,
yeah.
and
Well,
that kind of like just made me want to do good at four cross after that.
actually thinking now, it was actually must have been before that. It was Bill Jewell and Prokop came and he
Yeah,
was on like a specialized hardtail with I think he had flat pedals on and it was quite a naturally type four cross track. There was some off camera stuff in it. I think it was a bit muddy. I remember it was still when Wade Boots was doing really well on Trek. And he obviously was Lopes, EC, Cedric, and yeah, I remember coming up against him in like I don't know the second or third round, and he like smoked me down the first straight, obviously, and then I sort of caught him up on some off camera stuff, and I had quite a decent battle with him, and he beat me, and I was like fair play, and then I remember I'm pretty sure it was Eric Carter he was against him in the next round or the round after that, and I remember he beat Eric Carter, and Eric was like proper confused, like blown away, like
yeah,
how did
yeah,
he beat me? He was like angry, sort of thing, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And then yeah, from then on, he was just a formidable, a rider because there'd been other BMXs that had come in, like I don't think. He'll worry me, he'll mind me saying, but a good friend of mine, Dale Holmes. Dale had an amazing first straight and stuff, but Dale never took to downhill. He never had that sort of looseness, aggressiveness on the, on the when you're not as in control.
yeah,
Uh, Even though Dale did pretty well at that Lugano four cross, but Procop was one of them, more modern at the time BMXs that really could ride the
yeah.
mountain bike as well.
He
Uh,
always had a good combination of skills, a good all round skills base. So Pro
yeah,
Cop, I always like watching him ride, and
yeah,
he's pretty quick on an enduro bike too.
yeah, definitely he is. Um, but going. One thing I wanted to just touch on because we didn't even talk about it, and it's pretty crazy, really, because obviously it was just another race and experience for you. But how was it going into that Olympic BMX final? Like, what were the nerves like for that? Obviously, what a lot of the time when you make the final, it's not as nerve-wracking as the semi-finals for me at least.
Yeah, no, I had the exact same experience. I was always like that in finals. Like same thing at any four cross world champs final. Like when you're in the final, like I was always pretty calm, which I think always worked to my advantage.
Yeah.
But the same thing with the BMX final. Like everyone was like just trying to get there, and you just know once you're in the final that anything could happen. You're nervous, but like I don't remember being any more exceptionally nervous than any other race. So um, the thing was, I remember watching Ann Caro. Obviously we're watching the women's finals. We're getting ready for our final, which is pretty nerve wracking. But
So do
seeing
you?
her swoop that low line, and I
Yeah.
was like, if I don't get the first straight, that's Plan B. I'm going for that, and that's exactly what happened. I was a little anxious on the gate, and I just tagged it with the front wheel coming out and just stalled out that fraction and got shut down the ramp. So from then it was just like I'm hitting that low line, and I got to say, like, if I have any regret in my whole career, it's that I have no idea why I did not drift out to the right. I had every right to do it. I was ahead of Maris on the exit of the first corner. If I would have drifted out to the white line and totally shut him down,
Yeah.
who knows what could have happened. It's another one of those woulda, coulda, shoulda moments. But like,
Well,
what was I doing? Like, I look back on that, I'm like, you idiot. Like everyone talks about the second corner when I crashed,
I
and
mean,
but
I think that's the difference in, you know, correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but and I'm good friends with Brian Lopes as well. But I reckon if Lopes had been in that situation, Maris would have got shut down for sure.
yeah, I think it's like that was definitely a weakness I had, which I definitely didn't have later on. It was the same thing with that Livigno Four Cross Worlds final that I kind of at that point I wasn't taking it super seriously. So like with Four Cross at Livigno, so in some levels I didn't feel like I really belonged there. So
Yeah,
that's why like it absolutely and another year later I would have shut him down all day long in that first turn.
yeah,
And another year later with BMX I would have shut down Maris for sure. But like I think that there's just so much going on. Honestly, the entire race was just a blur.
yeah,
Like I didn't. It was like 10 minutes after the race. I didn't remember any part of. You're just on autopilot, and I don't remember anything that was going on. I remember coming out of the first corner and just thinking, "Holy shit, I'm in the lead." And then you could hear the crowd, and it was just. I don't know. I didn't have the thought like, "Where's everyone else?" Like, get over there and I
yeah,
think I always sort of rode my best that way when you were just on autopilot, but it's
yeah.
one of those moments where I just wish I would have been a little bit more aware. So I just, yeah.
And then
But honestly, I wasn't, I was upset with myself because I think I missed a bit of an opportunity. But at the same time, Maris and Mikey Day were on another level at that race. Like they were just so smooth, so fast, lap after lap after lap. So when he won, I was not up. Like I was like, well, he deserved to win. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's always been a part of me too. Is like I like seeing the guy who deserved to win.
yeah,
And if that's not me, then I'm happy for. I just get upset when I feel like someone who shouldn't have won does win because they get lucky.
yeah,
But that's all part of racing too. So what can you do?
yeah, for sure. And I mean, flipping, I remember. I don't even know what year it was, but I remember flying to LA, I think, and Dale picked me up from the airport or something like that. And Maris was in the car with him. I think it was after the Olympics. And dude, that how we've done mountain biking and BMX, but that guy to me, he just looked like a different sort of athlete altogether. He was so big and so strong. He looked like a flipping
Yeah,
American football player or something. I couldn't believe how big he was. And
yeah. It's pretty intimidating to race against, to be honest.
yeah, I can imagine. I can
He
imagine.
definitely had that period of time there where he was definitely the guy.
Yeah,
So
for sure. Amazing athlete. Um, but and then just before we move on from that BMX final, I think going into that second corner, you were still battling for a medal there, weren't you? And then what happened?
yeah. So Safisa Nolapo, like, and again, like everyone said that I must be super upset with him, but honestly, it's the Olympic final. Everyone's going for it, and like I would have probably done the same thing in his situation, but he just came in too hot, lost the front wheel. His front wheel took out my back wheel, and we both went down. About three or four of us went down. So
Yeah,
yeah, it was a pretty disappointing way to end everything. But like knowing that you went from the lead to still in a medal position to ending up sixth, so
yeah, yeah,
it was disappointing. But at the same time, like I've never let any sort of race results define my sort of worth, my happiness, whatever. Like
yeah.
I think I've always had a strong grasp of like it's just bike racing. Who really cares at the end of the day?
Well,
It's
yeah,
more for me the enjoyment out of riding and racing more comes from the preparation, sort of the day itself, and just the mentality you get in trying to achieve the best result you can. Like just the personal. I always feel like I never ever raced with like I've never been in a race thinking if I win this race I get X amount of bonus money or prize money or whatever. Like that has never crossed my mind. It was always just like I want to win because I want to win. That was it. So
okay, cool.
when you know you've given it your all and you don't win because something like that happens, like you're
Yeah,
still not that upset about it because at the end of the day, like and again, like having something like cancer even just solidified that even more. Just like who really cares about bike racing? It's cool, and I'll always love bike racing. I'll always be a fan of bike racing, but at the end of the day, who really cares?
yeah. Well, yeah, we can touch on that as well. But what? out of all the different things that you've won and achieved and done, is there anything that really stands out that you're the most proud of, would you say?
Um, I still think winning the Enduro World title was probably the main thing, just because I sort of felt like I'd already had my sort of four cross career, and so that was a big achievement too. That was always something. Obviously, being an elite world champion is something. Knowing that you're the best in the world at something is like that was a huge satisfaction. Like something I'd wanted for so many years, and I had so many runs of bad luck. Like I've led multiple world champs finals and only won one because something would always happen, get taken out or flat tire or something, and but then the enduro world title was just like it was a season long thing. There wasn't a 1 day thing, so it was I guess it was kind of like more what the World Cup is now. But you know, the whole season, the 7 races defining who the world champion was. You just knew that you had to be on every week. You have to be good on all sorts of terrain, and just like really putting that focus in and to wanting to achieve that goal too, and then doing it was I thought I had a good chance of doing it the year before, and I was sort of having a lot of battles with Jerome back and forth, but he got the better of me by the end of the season. But just doing it the next year was a big satisfaction. So, and again, like I guess from then come back full circle to the whole like I still had a lot of motivation to do well, but the fire. I mean, that season honestly took a lot out of me as well. Like I was like a robot that year. Like it was bed and the diet, the training, the recovery, everything was like so regimented. I just needed a big break after that season. That was not a sustainable lifestyle that I did that year to win that title. But I proved to myself that I could do it. But it took a lot out of me, and I
Right.
kind of never really got back to that point again after that.
And you know how did you? Because I remember, I think it was. It can only have been Damien or Sean. What one of them two, was telling me when you were, really focused on the four cross and the training. I guess that may be a similar time to the BMX. I don't know if this is true, but they told me like you'd set your alarm in the middle of the night, get up and eat a chicken breast because you were trying to get stronger. And is there any truth in that?
There's some truth to that. There was my diet was pretty strict about protein intake and all that sort of stuff. I thought you were going to talk more about how Damien actually wrote it into my contract that I had to spend a certain amount of hours per day at a World Cup in the pits
Oh
because I had
no!
a big thing about being off my feet. Like I just wanted to be as far away from the venue as possible.
Okay.
Damien wanted to be me to be in the pits and be talking to people and mingle sort of thing, but he tried very hard to accommodate. He even found me this super comfy sort of deck chair sort of thing that was my chair that was in the pits. I went to all the way. He found it in. Oh man, I'd forgotten about this, but he found it in some little nook at Val de Sol at the World Cup venue,
Yeah.
and he thought that looks like something Jared would like. So he
Right.
stole it. Said, "Here's your chair. You can be comfy in the pits. You just got to spend time in the pits, be seen." Because I just wanted to be off my feet, off in my room, like ignoring the world and just focusing on racing. So I had my routine and I was sticking to it. And luckily, when you're winning races, there's not a whole lot that people can
Yeah.
say to stop you from doing it. If you're winning, they're not going to really stop you from doing what you're doing. But
Yeah.
you better believe that if you're not winning, there's going to be a conversation happening. So I thought the more thing you were going to talk about too was like the time zone thing. Like we'd come from America, and if because like often four cross happened in the evening,
Yeah.
and I was big on the whole window of like your body's natural testosterone production is at its highest a certain amount of hours after waking. So I would like,
When is
especially the
that?
European.
When
Hey,
when that's I've never trained properly in my life. So when is that?
there's all sorts of science out there.
Is it too
Science.
late for me? Do you think, or can we get on a training program now?
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
But anyway, so for the European World Cups, I would travel with blackout blinds. Basically, a lot of the places had them, but I traveled with like basically black curtains.
Yeah.
And after, because you're so amped up after like practice and qualifying or whatever, so I couldn't get to sleep anyway. So instead of, I'd like sit in my bed and I wouldn't go to sleep until 4 o'clock in the morning. So I'd watch movies and like fully recover properly, but I just basically stayed on the US time zone.
Okay.
So I didn't try to change it because we were racing at night and I wanted to stay on that routine. I'd go to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning and wake up at about lunchtime or one or two in the afternoon, and then you'd be pristine prime ready for practice at 4:30. So that
All
was
right.
just my routine at all the European World Cups.
Well,
I
I
thought that's where you're going with that story, but that's a fun side note.
no, because I somebody else told me this about Lopes that he used to do his training in California that would sync in with when he went to Europe for the racing, and so that's super interesting. I think like you mentioned before, and why you're so successful, both of you. You must be very similar and focused in those areas that I'd have never even thought about, which
There's so many things that you can do that like no, I guess that's been part of my role with the Yeti is like that's the big thing I helped like Sam with early and Richie is just all the things I'd learned over the years, like basically fast tracking them with that knowledge of certain things
yeah,
to get them to where I was at in my late 20s when they were in their early 20s.
yeah.
So, because then if you learn that stuff early, you can just keep progressing and progressing and progressing and have that success early on your career and just hopefully keep it going. So that's what the things I knew when I was in my late 20s and early 30s, I just wish I would have known that when I was younger. So,
And where did you get all this knowledge from? Is there certain people that really influenced you, like you've done with others?
um, honestly, I reckon I've put in on an average from in the last 20 years, I reckon I'd probably average 10 hours a week of just studying, training diaries, journals, just any information. It doesn't matter if it's from another sport, just there's so many things you can learn from training techniques and training theories and adapt it to whether it be XC, enduro, downhill, four cross, whatever, BMX. There's just, you can adapt. It's like the same sort of philosophies work in different applications and just bit of trial and error for sure. And some things didn't work, but just especially all off season, it'd just be about trying new things, trying to see what worked, and just to get yourself to a little bit higher level and just putting together a really solid program all around. And not only like physically would it help you, but like mentally as well. Just knowing that you were as prepared as you could be on race day is a huge mental advantage. So
Yeah.
I think like there's been a few early on in the BMX program. We had a sports scientist, Mark Osborne, he got me really into the idea of just like reading journals and diaries and training philosophies and whatever, and just learning for yourself. Because I always sort of thought that if you can, as a coach, you can explain things to people, but if they're not absorbing it, then it's kind of not going to have its full effect. But as a rider, if you're learning all this for yourself and understanding it and then applying it, you're going to just find that, the top level you can be at. So that was always my goal. And Mark Osborne just had a way of explaining things in more simple terms that I could understand. And he just started the snowball going sort of thing of just like, he'd explain things to me and I'd learn it and then learn more about it myself just through my own sort of research. And he'd send me training journals and stuff like that. And just like so he was probably the main guy that got me really into it. And Sharples at the time was the BMX Olympic coach, and he was really good at just like, all right, what you're doing is working, so keep doing your thing. And I got along with Scotty really well as a coach, where other people sort of butted heads with him a little bit, but we always had a really good relationship. And then he had a year as well being Yeti team manager, which was really good too. But yeah, so those two guys probably the main two, and then but a lot of it's just been my own study and learning, and that sort of got me to the position I'm at now with the role with Yeti and especially like this. You're seeing Slav's just there's been a little bit of tweaking his program the last few years, but seeing his domination this year, him and seeing Dan do well as well. Like Dan's one of your guys from the past, and
Amazing.
seeing him kill it this year has been amazing too. Dan's a super cool guy and
You couldn't
awesome
get
rider.
you couldn't get too I don't know Slav at all, to be honest, but just, looking at the different riding styles and
Yeah,
you get to different people from Dan and Slav, I guess, could you?
I think that's where it's sort of easier for me to coach Slav because the way what works for me is what works for him. So pretty much what he's doing for training is directly taken from what I did for training, and it's been working. So
Yeah.
he needs a lot of structure. He needs a plan, and he sticks to it amazingly.
Okay.
Like you tell him to do a road ride for his power numbers, he could be a road pro. His sprint power, his all his power numbers are just like wow. Like he is so strong. I mean, you can see from looking at him that he's strong, but
Yeah.
his numbers are amazing. And
See, I don't know a lot about I don't know a lot about that stuff, but as I've got older, when I was, racing mountain bikes and stuff when I was younger, I've never even really had a road bike or done road cycling. But now I love watching the Tour de France, and like I'm a super fan of Tadej Pogacar. Like,
yeah,
is are people like that just one-off people, or have they trained to be like that, or is a big part of it just their physiology and how they're built up? Because I don't quite
um,
understand how much, like they talk about Tadej and how much power he's got, and yet they're small dudes, aren't they?
yeah. I mean, he's just got an amazing engine, obviously, but I think there's different guys. Like I'll use Richie again as an example. Like his power numbers on a road ride, for example, even doing intervals, his numbers aren't very good. But then for some reason in a race, like he can just throw down, like what he's got, and Richie's one thing he's really got working for him is he recovers amazingly quick after short bursts of effort, and he's so efficient on the bike. Like you'll see his heart rate during a descent that like some guys will be pinging at like 180, and Richie's just hanging out at 140, just like Canazay. There's that nasty climb in the middle. I think last time they raced there, I was standing there with you and Todd as well, Richie's
Oh, yeah,
gym
yeah,
coach.
the steep climb in
The
the
steep climb, and Richie just ripped everyone apart on that
yeah,
section. And like the size of him, he's got no business being there with the little
yeah.
guys on that climb, and he just ripped them apart because he came in. We had the whole race plan worked out of like don't you're not even breathing when you hit the base of that climb. You're not even breathing. You're just riding efficiently because Richie can do that. He can just sit at like 140 beats a minute, riding absolutely pinned and like just being super efficient, recovers so quickly, and
Okay.
then he's got everything in the tank to just unleash on that 1 45-second climb. So,
Yeah, because he's
and he's got
super
amazing
powerful.
power for that. Yeah, he's got the power for that, but you make him go for too long without any recovery, and he just bang lights out pretty quick. But it just works for him for enduro. It works really well for him.
And how
If
did
there's a little punchy climb, he's gonna smash it.
Hmm. Whereas, like, obviously, going back a few years when Sam Hill was doing really good at it, you wouldn't put Sam in anywhere near the same power output as Richie, but Sam seemed to be able to sustain his high effort for quite a long time as well.
Yep. I actually remember a testing thing we did. We had the national downhill team. We used to do a bunch of training camps, and I remember we did a bunch of power testing one day, and Sam's peak power and his 10-second power wasn't very different. His 10-second power was pretty much on par with his maximum power. I don't remember what the exact figures were, but basically his ability to sustain his max, like close to his max power, was like pretty incredible. So that's all I remember from that. But
Um,
yeah, Sam obviously like just maintained speed everywhere and enduro. You could see that clear as day watching him ride, like just super efficient at maintaining speed, and he had enough in the tank to lay down on the pedals to be in the mix when he had to. So
yeah, yeah. So, obviously, with all the different disciplines that you've done, is the one that you think you've been has come easiest to you, or that you feel like your physiology is more suited to than another one, would you say?
it's sort of hard to know really because like had sort of the BMX and XC background, then turned into downhill. So I think funny side story was as a junior, we did a whole bunch of like your body physiology testing, and I came in at a near perfect match for a figure skater of
No
all
way.
things. Yeah. So I'm not sure what that means, but luckily I was pretty up there for cycling as well. So um,
Okay. And what's I've never done a test or anything? I wish
Honestly,
it.
I don't remember what it involved. I was like 17 at the time, so I don't remember what it involved, but I just remember that was the result and I was kind of embarrassed about it.
No way. And because again, it's what people have told me, but I think it was a similar time when you were doing it. But I believe that like Rennie had crazy power, like to a pro track cyclist. I heard.
Yeah, Rennie did so he did I remember he cracked 2000 watts on the whatever the power bike was at the time. So those things were terrible to I think at the time when I was well, so I did we did testing with the BMX program and on one of those same sort of bikes, my peak power I got was about 2100. But obviously, like I was training very specifically for sprint training. But then on the bike as well, there was a whole technique to it. And on the bike, I was doing about I think the highest number I got on the bike was 2640.
Wow.
So um, because obviously those test bikes are just like you feel like you're pedaling squares, man. Like you just
Yeah.
like if anyone's ever done a Zwift race and you're doing the sprint in Zwift, that's what it feels like. You're just pedaling up and down. There's no sort of it feels so unnatural, but it is like a good baseline test. But like if guys would come back and do the test repeatedly, that sort of work out how to do it more efficiently and they'd get higher numbers. But Rennie's power was like purely just from, I think he said at the time like he would just do sprint after sprint to clear the dirt jump sort of thing. So that was his training, just do it all day. So
Yeah.
again, it comes back to like if you're doing something specific, then you're going to get better at it. So
Yeah.
that should be a huge part of training. I'm a big believer in specificity for training too. So
Okay.
he had that in spades.
I mean, just purely riding with people over the years, all the different people I've ridden with. I haven't done much riding with Richie, so I can only, go off what I see. But one of the most powerful natural riders I've ever seen is Kovarik. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever done much with Chris or seen any. I don't know if Chris ever did any specific training with Australian cycling, but the amount of power Chris could put down just pedaling a bike was insane.
I think those two are just like they're out of the same mold pretty much. And in a
Yeah,
lot of ways, you're out of the same mold, as I'm sure you've seen over the years. But
yeah,
so there was I did a few times where like Chris actually there was a couple of times where I'd stay with him and Rennie lived together for a while and they were only like 2 hour drive away, so I'd go and stay with them. But to say that there was more drinking going on than riding would be an understatement. So they would go out and ride, but like the first day would be like you do a few runs and they'd stop in at the bottle shop on the way home and then drink on, which as a 19-year-old, I thought this is pretty cool, like hanging out with my idols pretty much at the time. And they wanted me to come and train with them. But then
yeah,
the second day, like I'm ready to ride and they're hungover in bed still, and we might do a few runs. And then that after you finish riding, you do, maybe do three downhill runs and then same sort of thing, back to the bottle shop again. And you're just like, oh, okay. Like by day three, I'm like, all right, guys, I'm going home. Like it
yeah,
was
yeah,
just a bit of an ongoing cycle at the time. But when
yeah.
they did ride and when they did put the power down, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, just those two guys. If they had if they put the effort in that you have, and other athletes that have achieved amazing things, I think them two dudes could have won stuff incredible,
Yeah.
amount of things they could have won just off their natural ability.
Yeah, the natural ability and then just the natural all-round ability is pretty insane with those two. But
Yeah,
a little bit more dedication and focus. They were sort of in that period where there was the party time and then it sort of became more serious and they kind of were stuck in the old ways a little bit. So
yeah,
a little bit unfortunate, but I mean they still had amazing careers and
yeah, yeah, for
two
sure.
very likable guys and very, a lot of ability and they still are remembered for what they could do on a bike. So
Yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. And so going, just obviously with your career and when you went into enduro, how many years when did you first get on the Yeti bikes?
Yeti came about because of Rennie.
Yeah,
So I first went for Yeti in 2004, at the end of 2003.
yeah,
So there was a whole basically on the Mad Cats, the Orange Mad Cats team my first year, and then it became Iron Horse Mad Cats, and then
yeah,
that's when we had the team was me and Rennie and Bryn and Sam
yeah. That
for
was some.
2003. And then I ended up hurting myself at the first World Cup, missed the entire season.
Yeah,
All three of them had pretty amazing seasons. Sam, Rennie won the World Cup overall. Sam won the junior world title and had some pretty awesome elite World Cup race results
yeah,
back when there was no junior category.
yeah,
And Bryn sort of established himself pretty well that year with some solid results. And then, but because I hurt myself that Caprun crash,
yeah.
and then at the first World Cup the next year, then I had the Fort William crash. Then basically the team said to me that I was too much of an injury risk, so I was getting the cut,
Right.
which I was pretty disappointed about, purely because so at the end of the 2002 season, Sean took me into the Mad Cats head office, and the guy who was in charge of the sponsorship money for the team said to me that like we're going to renew the sponsorship with the team for next year because of my results from that year. So basically saying that like the team wouldn't have continued if I hadn't got results that year.
Well,
So at least that's the way I took it at the time. That's the words he said. So I sort of felt a little bit hard done by that. I was getting the cut because
yeah,
those guys had amazing seasons, but then I was getting cut when I
yeah,
sort of felt like that I don't know, at least owed another season to prove what I thought I was capable of. So,
yeah.
but anyway, so I always got along. I've always been really good friends with Rennie. So, Yeti was going through a bit of I guess, they had some financial troubles in the late nineties. Obviously, Rennie rode for Yeti for a few years there, and then moved on when Yeti weren't having a race team anymore, and that's then when he got on the Iron Horse team.
Mhm.
And Chris Conroy, and the owner of Yeti, and Rennie they always got along really well. And Conroy was looking for the next guy, and Rennie said, talk to Jared. So there was a national downhill round at Threadbow,
Yep.
and I'd already torn all the Iron Horse, even though I was still in contract. I was kind of bitter about the whole situation, so my only sponsor left at that point was Oakley. So I tore all the stickers off my bike, raced in an Oakley t-shirt and shorts, and won the downhill national round. And when I got back home from that national round, I had six different offers from teams in my email inbox. So I was talking to the Maxis team, which was big at the time. I was talking to Foes, Intense, GT, Yeti, and the Turner team at the time. And so I had a bit of decision making to make. And actually, to be honest, at first I wasn't going to sign with Yeti. I didn't think it wasn't what my heart wanted to go for. And
Right.
then actually, Stickman was really good. It's just we always, for some reason, he'd always talk to me, and I developed a bit of a relationship with him, and I just sort of took his advice as like what I should do, and he just said to me that he thought that I should take Yeti because it'd be the best fit for me. So what started with like not what I thought was the offer from Yeti that I was going to take, I sort of listened to him and listened to common sense a bit, I guess, and said, all right, I need to do at this point, I don't need to take what might be the most money for now. I need to be on a program where I can be happy and progress and good product and whatever. And it was sort of something that I guess I never regretted from there. From day one, it just felt like home to me. So it worked out really well that way.
Cool. Yeah. And you went. You were with Yeti right up until what? To was it 2014 when or 15 when you signed when you moved over to Specialized?
Yeah, to 2016, I went to Specialized. So I still
Sorry.
had,
Yeah.
yeah. And people thought at the time because Richie had just won his first Enduro world title in 2015 that I was sort of getting the shove along sort of thing, but that wasn't the case. So Specialized actually wanted to sign Richie as well. They wanted both of us, but Richie wanted to stay with Yeti, and it was a tough time because I was super happy at Yeti. There was nothing that I was unhappy about, but when I got that offer, and like so we always had this interesting sort of conversation in years prior where Damien, as team manager, would say, if there's any other team you'd like to ride for, who would it be? And the number one team I always said was Specialized, and it was purely because I liked their product. I loved how they always pushed. It was the same sort of things as Yeti. Like they always pushed innovation.
Mhm.
They always had the coolest bikes, like the best co-sponsors. Like the bikes were always just dialed, and it looked like such a professional sort of outfit. So when they approached me about riding for them, it was just something I just knew I had to consider. And as talks went on, and I sort of talked to Conrad, I didn't want to leave because we'd always talked about the long term and beyond racing. I was like, look, I have every intention of coming back to Yeti. Don't get me wrong there, but I just explained it to Conrad as like it's like your boy needs to go away to college and discover the world for himself, sort of thing. I'd feel like I missed out on something if I just spent my entire career with one team, which
Yeah.
would be cool to do as well. But I just really had a strong feeling like I needed to experience something else. And I was
Yeah.
like, I can learn things there and how they run the team and the program. And who knows, some point down the track, maybe I can bring that all back to Yeti.
Yeah.
And of course, I never told Specialized that at the time, but um, the
Yeah.
Specialized thing was never going to be a long-term thing. Like you see, they keep on some people for a long period of time and others not so much. But
Yeah.
so I signed a 4-year contract with Specialized because I wasn't just going to leave everything we'd built at Yeti for just a 2-year deal sort of thing. So I was like, we ended up signing a 4-year, which
That's a
but
big
honestly,
contract.
I never stopped talking to Damien about the future and what it looked like beyond my specialized contract. So we always kept that conversation open and evolving. And
Yeah.
I gave specialized every opportunity to, continue things if they wanted to. But the closer it got to the end of my contract, and I was always happy at specialized too, that we had a great little sort of close knit small team. Like even though it's a big company, the enduro side of things was quite a small, close knit little group.
Yeah.
And I was always happy there too. But it was just natural. By about 2018, I just knew I was going to be back at Yeti. So
Okay.
we always kept that conversation going, and that's just exactly how it evolved. So and we just sort of picked up where we left off, so to speak. So
Yeah. And you don't need to tell me numbers if you don't want to or anything, but was there a big difference in salaries and stuff from Yeti to Specialized? I've always wondered, because Yeti have always had some amazing top athletes, but
yeah,
company wise, it's not as big as Specialized. Where did the money come into to the situation?
well, a fun little sort of free bit of context for that is so my first 2 years with Yeti, I had 2004, and at the end of 2004, I thought I was like blowing up finals, but when I look back on it, I was like showing a lot of speed and potential. And Conroy actually locked me in for um, the end of 2004. I signed a 3-year extension on my contract, and because at the time, you're young, you're happy there, so you're like, I just want the security so I can just focus on riding. But Conroy said, "This is what I'm going to pay you, and if ever you get to the point where you're worth more than this, then you've outgrown our team." But sure enough, like as the years went on, Yeti sort of started growing more and more, and that number just got left behind year after year after year. And he kept upping my salary, and I was always happy there, and everything was working out great. But
Did you come up with the salary figures that you want, or was it more of an offer from Yeti?
we always like for me, I never. I was always my own manager as well, so I liked the whole contract negotiation part, the back and forth, and bartering and whatever. And the numbers, like I was always like always had a figure on my head like this is what I'll be happy with, and I never because like I was never interested in. Obviously, you want to make money, but you want to. I always wanted to be in a situation where I was happy and like had everything I felt I needed. So um, everything always worked out with Yeti, but with Specialized, there was a bit more money. There was just little bits and pieces here and there, so it was financially it was very good.
Hmm.
But Yeti couldn't quite match the money, and I was going to be, I would have been happy to sign with Yeti for what they were offering too.
Yeah.
But there was just a few little things that popped up that just made the offer. Like there was the whole, you could grow I guess, your exposure a bit more. There was a whole on-track series going on with Curtis, and
Yeah.
Curtis was going to be my teammate. Curtis is a guy we've been really good friends since 2003 when I first met him. Like we
Yeah.
always did runs together at races. We always hung out at races. The whole team was just something I was going to be happy with, and just the way they'd cover certain expenses and like I had like bonuses just to go to a local race and show up and be seen. That you get a bonus payment for that. So
Wow.
there was a little bit of a pretty enticing financial aspect, and I kind of started thinking like I've had all these years, like I deserve to make some money, like, and it was still that team that I really wanted to ride for, and I felt like there was no compromises. I did feel sort of a little bit bad that I was leaving Yeti because I didn't want to leave Yeti. I wanted to keep that. It's always felt like my family, you know. So um, it was a little bit sad to leave, but I felt like I was doing it for a reason. And I still have no regrets doing it because it was something I just felt really strongly at the time that I needed to do. And if
Yeah.
there's one thing I've done through my whole career was like I always listened. I'd always really think things through and like really listen to what my head was telling me and listen to other people's feedback. And I just I just felt like it was something I just had to do. So,
Yeah. Brilliant.
but Yeti was like Yeti over the years has evolved very much into a team that does put some money behind riders. So that's been good to see too.
And does the money for the team from Yeti, is a big part of that come from Yeti itself, or does most of the money for the teams come from, partner sponsorships, like, always been highly sponsored with Fox suspension and
Yep.
and some other brands that have always been sort of linked with Yeti. What,
Well,
how?
as the years went on, I was always like, I'd honestly have no idea now how much Yeti puts in versus the sponsors, and that's like those days of being, when Yeti was the sort of the mid 2000s when everything was like when I signed for Yeti, there was 8 employees in the whole company, so you just know everyone and you sort of know the inner workings of the team, and there's
Yeah,
almost like no secrets. You knew everything that was going on, but as the years go on and the money gets higher and budgets grow and everything, like I had no idea about that in the later years, so I couldn't tell you now, but
yeah,
I could tell you from the mid 2000s.
yeah.
But yeah, so
Fair.
Fox was at the time. Fox was definitely putting in the lion's share of the money, and Yeti was trying to do. Yeti was still very busy trying to grow the brand. Like Conroy and Hoog, the owners, were very good. Like any of the profits were going straight back into the company to help grow it to, you
Great.
know, so they were trying to do as little as they could with Yeti's money for the race program and try to rely on the sponsors. And
Yeah,
yeah, we made it work. So I think they did a really good job of managing it all at the time. So
definitely. And when you moved over to Specialized at a much bigger company, was did things change a lot? Was the product a lot different? Did you have more input on or less input on new bikes and product that you felt that you needed for the racing?
yeah, that's a little bit of frustration there. Like so in the November of when I signed the contract in I think August sometime in 2015, and then season finished and November of 2015 I went over for a visit to Specialized to like get to meet everyone, and we had a week lined up of like meetings with like there was the tire department, the wheel department, the apparel department, the helmet guy, and obviously the bikes, and because they do everything. So that was all pretty exciting and new, but it was pretty frustrating when I'd already been at home riding all the bikes, and I'd tell them the things that needed changing with the bikes because that was a big part of obviously with Yeti having a ton of feedback in the development of the bikes over the years. Like I don't know how many of Yeti's bikes over the years that I've had major sort of input in helping them develop them. And the first thing I got in the meetings of Specialized, even though I'd been on these bikes, I knew straight away first ride what needed to change with the bikes. And they're like, you just need to get used to it. Like the bike's fine, you just need to get used to it. I'm just like, this is what we talked about. Like all I could think was like, I signed on with the agreement that I was going to have input in a substantial way of what was to improve with the bikes and everything. And like my biggest regret was the tires because they promised me that the tires were not up to par.
Hmm.
We were just getting flats all the time. That was the story of my 2016 season, is just flatting and breaking wheels
Yeah.
and like everything was just because it was such a big company, it was delay after delay after delay, and the tires just never got sorted basically. So and then there started being a bit of friction there because they thought I was sort of blaming the tires on bad performance, but honestly, especially in wet conditions with the compounds they were giving us, you could not perform in wet conditions on the tires we had at the time.
Yeah.
And then it was sort of a double frustration when we're like, when we're not getting results,
Yeah.
like just let us run blacked out maxes for now until we're happy with the product. Like we don't need to promote anyone, but just at least get us in a position where we can be happy with the product and we can get results. Which because you get a flat tire, it makes the entire bike look bad, makes the specialized wheels look bad, makes the specialized clothing look bad, makes the specialized bikes look bad,
Yeah.
makes all the other co-sponsors look bad, just because we're getting flat tires all the time. So they just wouldn't listen, wouldn't budge on that. So that was a pretty major frustration at the time.
And is that
And
one,
it's something.
is that like one individual who's in charge of the tire program, or is there somebody that oversees the whole thing?
Um, so the tire, there was a few different people, but the main guy was a guy from Germany who came from Continental. He made some good tires for the road side of things and all that. And his ideas were good, but we tried telling him like he was convinced that you just feel like a Maxxis tire and you can feel how soft it is and the slow rebound of the knobs and like what that feels like on muddy routes and rocks and how it conforms to the terrain. And he was convinced he could do the same thing with just mixing different things into a compound. And the tires were just like concrete compound. Like I don't want to say too much bad about Specialized, but they just were not listening to our feedback at the time, and it was very frustrating. Then he actually came to the Pets and EWS in 2017, and it sort of rained over that, and he went up and did a run himself on the last long stage, top to bottom, and that was the first. He came back into the pits and he said to me, "You're right. You can't ride these tires in the wet." And I'm like, "I've been telling you this for years." Like, and it was so at that moment I was like, on one hand I was happy that he was finally listening, but on the other hand I was just fuming because I
Yeah.
was like this should have been sorted. This shouldn't have been an issue from the start. If we would have had
Yeah.
blacked out maxes, then we would have been getting more results. And especially it was like a double whammy because it was the Enduro wet series, the 2017, 2018, just wet race, wet race, wet race, wet race.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. So yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It still blows my mind that, some people that are in charge of certain departments, they don't, always listen and they think they know best, which is, you know, crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's like there were so many good people there that were just amazing to work with, and seeing the passion behind so many things. I still have a ton of respect for Specialized as a brand. Like seeing
Yeah.
what they do and how they go about things is very impressive. But just personally at the time, it was just that period where that was the big thing that was evolving at the time. Was like the tracks were getting gnarlier. We needed
Yeah.
bigger casing, softer compounds, and they just weren't evolving quick enough. And it was sort of the same thing with the geometry of the bikes. Like we wrote down a thing about what our ideal geometry would be, and I sort of told them what that looked like. And then the year after, my last year when I was going through chemo, they got me the Stumpy Evo, which was basically the geometry that I'd asked for.
Yeah.
And the bike was amazing. It was so good. But I just never had that to race on. Like the amount of funky things I was doing with my bikes to, you're running like offset bushings and like over travel forks to get the head angle slacker, then offset bushings to get the bottom bracket back lower. And then you're playing around with tire sizes just to tweak the geometry a bit more. And funky Olin's was amazing with suspension, but there's some pretty funky tunes going on to get things to work the way we wanted. And it just like the race bikes just felt like non-stop band-aid fixes. Like we're doing this, but now this is off. So now we've got to do this, and now this is off. And it was just so much faffing about trying to get things in the ballpark of what you wanted. Where if they would have just listened, it would have saved a lot of time. And the geometry of their stock bikes just ended up becoming that anyway. Like Yeti always listened, and the bikes were sort of ahead of the curve a bit because they listened to our feedback. We
Yeah.
could see which way the racing was going because you're there, you're living it, you're traveling all over the world racing. You see what direction everything's going in. But
Yeah.
the Specialized, the guys had this little mindset that like because it worked, on the trails in Santa Cruz where they rode every day,
Yeah.
that it was fine. But like that is not indicative of what we were racing. So that was
Yeah.
a big frustration. And I'm sure if some of them see this, they'll probably be pissed off at me for saying it. But
No,
honestly, like they to listen at the time and they didn't.
I don't see how they could be. I remember back, doing little bits myself with Intense back in the day, and I'd always ask the welders if they could weld my head tube on like 2 degrees slacker than the current bikes, and um,
Yep.
because we're thinking about that stuff day in day out. You ride and you're trying to ride these trails that the guys at the factory aren't, and you're thinking, well, that would work better, and yet companies are sometimes a bit reluctant because I think they look at the numbers of all the competitors are doing, and
Yeah,
they don't
exactly.
want to
Yeah.
step too much outside of the norm. If you know,
Yep. Well, that was sort of the only thing with Yeti was like we always wanted to push the limits, but also keep it not go too far
yeah,
because they're not the sort of company. There wasn't a big enough company that they could make us complete, especially with the cost of carbon molds. They
yeah,
couldn't make us complete custom frames. So there's always a few little things we could do to tweak the bikes a bit, but we always found a balance between the extreme of what we wanted and what was sort of
yeah,
relevant for the market. So there was a balance we
yeah,
always sort of mixed there, and it always worked. So that was good. But
yeah, yeah, and it's
like I called it years ago that because there was for so many years where bikes were just getting longer, lower, and slacker, and it was just getting too out of hand.
yeah,
And like I got to the point where I was like, my bike now needs to be smaller and steeper again.
yeah,
And you see bikes have actually sort of they didn't sort of get smaller and steeper, but like they just stopped on like a cliff. They just like stopped. Like
yeah,
no bikes really getting bigger or slacker anymore. Now I think people have realized that like okay, enough is enough, and because we've got to the point like how far are we going to go with this? Like how
yeah,
low is too like how slack is too slack, and
yeah,
got to the point with like some bikes, like some of the Yetis. Even I've even experimented with like offset bushings run the other way to like steeper the head angle back up and all that because
yeah,
with enduro too, there's like you can have a steep head angle, slack head angle, and obviously a steeper head angle and the tighter techie stuff is going to work better. And
hmm
then the slacker more, lower slack is going to work better in the high speed. So
yeah,
you sort of got to find that balance in the middle somewhere. And there's no sweet setup. There's no bike that's going to be perfect in everything. You've just got to find
yeah,
a setup in the middle. It's going to be pretty good on everything and just get on with it. So
yeah, definitely, yeah, for
they
sure,
were always amazing at listening on that side of things.
yeah. Well, Jared, I haven't even gone through half the stuff I wanted to talk to you about. We haven't even talked about what you went through with your cancer and all how that affected everything. And there's loads of other stuff I want to talk to you about with the enduro, the current enduro scene, the current downhill scene, and the athletes you're working with. So, would you mind if we come back in a couple of weeks and did a part two? Because I think there's so much you could tell everybody that I think we can't miss out on it really, if that's all right with you.
Yep, sounds good. I know I do too much yapping sometimes. You get me on a tangent, I just can't stop.
I'm the same, mate. So I really enjoy it, and we've chatted loads over the years, but it's cool to have this time to really get into some stuff. So, but well, before we wrap it up today, obviously we've got I don't know how much you follow the Red Bull Hardline series. There was a Tasmania round earlier on in the year, and then this weekend is the one in Wales. What's your thoughts on that, and how is that for the sport of mountain biking?
Well, I always watch it. Like it's pretty cool to see. It's cool to see like the how far they can push it, basically. But um, just seeing like the guys going so fast on such a gnarly setup, like, and again, it's just I think the young guys are gonna just keep smashing and keep going faster and faster. And but always fun to watch, but probably not my cup of tea. I don't think you would have seen me line up for one of those.
Yeah, it's a different thing, isn't it? And I think as it's evolved over the last few years, I went to one of the early ones to watch when you know likes of Rory Cunningham and them guys were doing it. And the first track that Dan and G and the Dig Crew built, it was kind of evolving. Some stuff was too steep to actually race on, if you know what I mean. And it was
Yeah,
basically a sort of who can get down the track the smoothest and through the features. Whereas
yeah.
now,
The early ones didn't really look like racing.
no, it was kind of a bit more like a rampage style event, wasn't it? But
Yeah,
under race circumstances. And now it's evolved where the guys are going at World Cup pace on those tracks as well. It's pretty crazy to see.
Yeah, no, it's very cool to see. Like stuff like that is always cool to see, like the progression, and you gotta get to something that you see how far you can push something. It was always my biggest sort of criticism with four crosses. Like we always wanted bigger tracks, but the UCI were never willing to give it to us because they were too worried we were going to get hurt or something. But we were capable of so much more than what they were going to give us, and we wanted to do that, which is cool. Seeing what hardlines become now and seeing how far you can push the sport. So all for it.
Yeah, cool. So okay, so who's your if you were betting on this weekend, who would you put your money on?
I can't say I've seen the complete start list, but I think Asa was looking pretty good from the videos I've seen. So I put him in there for one of the top spots anyway. So
Yeah, I think that's a good shout for sure. And there's I've been watching a bit of social media stuff, and to be fair, everyone looks super fast. So
yeah,
I think it's going to
there's
be
a super cool clip came of Dan today. I watched that like probably 10 times.
yeah. He's some rider,
Yeah,
some bike rider, his old Booker.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, there's so many things I need to talk about, and if we can talk about that, like obviously how the demise of Four-cross, where Four-cross could have been, because like now that Warner Brothers is involved, such a big TV production company, the downhill is going more like a TV production company, and yet
yeah. That's where it would
Four-cross
have worked really
probably
well.
Four-cross is the discipline that could have worked the best for TV, in my opinion.
Yeah, maybe it'll come back. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
Make a comeback with me.
Oh, yeah. I don't think I never made it back in the day, so I don't think it's going to happen now. But yeah, it's we could definitely see a multidiscipline thing come back for the Warner Brothers or whoever is in charge of the TV thing. It would be great. But
Yeah,
um, well, we'll wrap it up today, Jared. I really appreciate your time, and it's been mega chatting. But there's so much more I want to ask you, and so we'll do a part two if that's okay.
sounds good, Pagey.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers,
I'll
mate.
I'll speak to you soon. See ya.
Yep. Have a good day. See ya.
Bye. Bye. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that first part of the episode. Jared's so knowledgeable, and it's so cool chatting with him. There's so many more things I want to ask him and get stuck into so we'll do a part two on that. So thanks very much for listening and watching, and as usual, please comment, like, subscribe, do all that really helps us going. And a big thing that's gonna help me in my continue with this, if that's what everyone wants, we've invested our hard-earned savings into some new merch. So we've got Stay on Your Bike new design t-shirts. We've got this color, and we've got a black one, and we've got black hoodies as well. So if you want to support us and help out, please have a look, and please purchase one of those, and try and spread the word. And yeah, thanks very much, and look forward to the next part with Jared Graves. Have a good week, everyone. We'll see you soon. Cheers.